I think all of the rebelled people and all of the unwanted people should host a little meet and greet in Anaheim, California on the same days.
The convention was a complete flop.
With that being said, unfortunately, it has been canceled.
On June 22, 2018, amidst the sweltering Southern California heat and mere miles away from Disneyland, thousands of people lined up in the parking lot of the Anaheim Marriott Suites. Minutes of waiting turned to hours, and the lucky few that had been able to get inside found themselves in a jumbled maze of people. Despite the capacity of the hotel being at 1,100 at most, 4,000 tickets were sold, and over 4,000 to 5,000 people packed the venue and the outside parking lot, according to local authorities. So to say the least, this was a disaster. Thousands baked in the hot sun as they weren't able to get inside, and those who were lucky enough to get access to the inside were forced to leave as the event was shut down, basically, due to there being no way for it to be, a safe event. Social media swarmed as anger over ticket prices, which many had paid $65 for, and others had paid thousands of dollars for, to travel and get accommodations in Southern California for Tanacon. And as Tanacon entered the internet history book of failed conventions, a question still lingered. Who was responsible for this, and how could this even happen? How were 4,000 tickets sold when the hotel capacity was only just over 1,000? And who even organized this event? Hi everybody, my name is Justin Jordan. Welcome to my couch, and I cover all things pop culture, nostalgia, and honestly, just whatever you want me to talk about. And today we're going to be talking about Tanacon and kind of the cultural impact that it had, because I honestly feel like I'm not dramatic in saying that Tanacon is still remembered today. I saw somebody say that Tanacon was basically like our modern day like Woodstock or something, or like the internet's Woodstock, and I have to say that if it was our internet's Woodstock, it would be Woodstock 1999. Let's just say it wasn't peace and love and stuff just started going off the rails. But regardless, if you like this type of content, please like and subscribe. We are so close to hitting 7,000 subscribers, and I'm honestly like shocked because we just hit 6,000 like a few weeks ago. So thank you all so much for watching, and let's just dive right into the rabbit hole of Tanacon and its consequences. So honestly, I'm just someone who's obsessed with like late 2010s internet culture in general, but I don't know, I also find myself really obsessed with failed conventions. Like the entire idea of a convention, I guess, to me is something so foreign, because I don't think I ever went to anything like VidCon or Playlist Live, or like really, I didn't have any interest in that even as a child. Like I just was chilling. I was perfectly fine not going to any of these conventions. Despite the fact that I did like some of these creators, I feel like we really can't do this whole story justice if we don't go into the context of like how Tana even rose, and kind of just the context of what she came up in as it pertains to like her era of YouTube. Kind of mid to late 2010s, story times were all the rage, and no, I'm not talking about story times that are like realistic, or story times that are reasonable, or story times that are even like honestly relatable. I'm talking about like the most outrageous story times that not even Tubi movie creators could make up. I'm talking about the toothbrush. I'm talking about, the bleach and tone. And it is amongst kind of this sea of absolute absurdity of like very, some would say exaggerated, hard to believe stories that Tana would really take her place in like getting her YouTube clout and her start on YouTube. This, I think, is really important to Tana's whole development as a YouTuber, as a content creator, because later on, a lot of people would take issue with this, and this would become a flashpoint for controversies. And like, sorry to jump to the present day, but I think it's important here. I think that her storytime era and her relationship to these storytimes that many see as like crazy or like, even false, I think it leads to this culture, or like people being less likely to believe Tana when she talks about serious stuff. And I just want to put a whole break on that conversation before it even starts. While it's important to, maybe like be objective and think about things in a way that is, taking in the whole context and the whole history of like a creator. And I'm not really talking about a specific situation here, but I guess more recently in Tana Mongeau news, conversations surrounding the Cody Co situation, and just a really quick, brief recap of that, Tana would come out with allegations that Cody Ko had done things with her while she was still 17, while she was still, underage. And mind you, this is a man with a fully grown, fully developed adult brain, which is just absolutely disgusting and disturbing. A lot of people take, her internet past and I get, thinking about her past in these situations, but it's also really important to think about what she has at stake, especially when she's making these, accusations against somebody or an entity that is so powerful. Ko had so many fans. Cody Ko has legal, probably resources and money to, if this was a defamatory claim, he has the resources at his disposal to take Tana down. If this was just a false allegation, if she was just, looking for clout like these people like to claim. Not only does she have defamation lawsuits, at risk if she was to just, lie about this, which is nonsensical in the first place. But this whole argument over her gaining clout from this situation, I feel like while there is a great deal of attention, given to people who come out and speak out against things that have happened to them, I think that people forget that that is not positive attention all the time. A lot of people will victim blame them. A lot of people will try to rationalize why this happened to them. A lot of people will be the nastiest kind of person ever in these circumstances. So again, I think the whole argument that they're just talking about this to get clout, it's a really shaky argument in my opinion. I just wanted to cover that real quick because we are going to get into some things that Tana will claim that I think is important to look at her past and look at kind of her actions surrounding what she's claiming. But I think that we can do that without victim blaming somebody. Tana is a complex person, and I want to make that clear that while I might sometimes question whether or not some things that she says about Tanacon are truthful, that I still wholeheartedly believe her when she's saying and making these type of allegations. But kind of back to the pre-Tanacon developments, I really just want to give you a taste of what was going on while Tana was making these story times and kind of just her whole vibe around 2018. Something that I think is really important to talk about when we talk about Tana, when we talk about her rise to fame, is just how young she was when a lot of this stuff was happening. When Tana really first blew up, or at least the first video on her page that is still up, is about a horrible hairdresser. It's the bleach and tone video. And she was literally only 17 when that video was posted. So imagine getting 1 million views, all this attention, all these people saying that you're lying, all these people being oh my God, you have a bad mouth. All this buzz around you from such a young age, kind of getting pushed into that world of influencing at such a young age. While Tana was 17, I still feel like that is kind of an age where you may not fully be ready for everything that, influencing and all this media buzz and all this hatred is, especially in the middle of your development as well. She was 20 when Tanacon happened, and I'm 20 right now, and just imagining planning a massive event, imagining having to interact with all these people and plan something and attach my name to something like that, that is insane to me. Do I think that her being 20 at the time of Tanacon excuses her from any sort of accountability in this whole situation? No. I just think it's something that's important to think about. I think it's something that's often not talked about or not really, thought about as it pertains to how that could have had a possible impact on her, overall development and on Tanacon's overall development. I feel like a lot of people learned about Tana's age while she was making these type of story times, because I want to emphasize that these story times were very raunchy sometimes, even got to the point where she would talk about, doing things with other people, crazy experiences she had. People were where are your parents? So let's just say that's complicated, and that's another thing that I also want to emphasize, because while Tana was also young, I feel like her relationship with her parents and kind of the distance between them, which might not necessarily has been as pronounced during the time of Tanacon, but I just think it's something that's also there to think about, that she might not have had that sort of guidance and that sort of bedrock that parents could offer, especially as you're rising in social media fame, especially as you are going and dealing with all this stuff. So Tana has basically in the past said that she basically was adopted by her friend Amari's parents just because of how absent her parents were in her own life, which I think is just really, really sad and really horrible. Controversial take, but I think parents should actually, parent their children, especially if they have the capacity to. And she has been very vague on like what she said about the relationship of her parents, because I think this also speaks to kind of the relationship and the type of people that her parents are. But like, her own parents sued her after she kind of talked about her own childhood on her MTV show. Absolutely insane. What type of parents sue their own child? I'm sorry, I can't imagine my mother just being like, hey, you've been served. Come see me in court because you talked about your own childhood experiences. Here's like a Redditor who has more, I guess, experience in Tana world, more like of the context. From what I've gathered, her parents are emotionally immature narcissists. They've always had issues since I can remember, way back at the beginning of her career. Once she ousted them for good due to their behavior and treatment of her, they waited for her to F up so they could sue her and get a payday, and they did. Sometimes once you become an adult, you start to realize that some stuff isn't normal. I went through the same thing with my mom when I was a kid. You just start to see things clearly and realize that they're not good people and you don't deserve to be treated the way they've treated you your whole life. Because they're so immature and narcissistic, they retaliate in whatever way they can to one-up you for standing up for yourself. They get angry that you don't just gloss over their abuse, and the truth is that they don't actually care if they get you back, they just want to win. They don't understand that in this situation, everybody loses. Forgive me for getting, too psychological here, but I do really feel like the context of Tana really not having that relationship with her parents, kind of having that odd relationship with her parents, it's reading like Tana was very much alone and vulnerable in a lot of her journey as an influencer. Like, while she definitely did, have friends, have community around her, it might have been very hard for her to find that sort of guidance to, to learn these type of lessons. I'm not saying that Tanacon was one of these lessons, but like, again, I think it's something that's important when we talk about Tanacon, when we talk about ultimately what ended up going wrong with Tanacon. So now that we have like that overarching context surrounding Tanacon, more context about what Tana's doing, more context about, just how she's interacting with the world and kind of how her own life and kind of how her own journey and influencing has impacted her. We're just gonna continue to see her evolution in the late 2010s and overall like why she ended up going into Tanacon at all. So in the late 2010s, specifically like 2017, the months leading up to Tanacon would just absolutely be a whirlwind and absolutely be insane. So Tana had started dating Bella Thorne, making a song Hefner, and I don't know why, but I wasn't really following Tana at this time, but I don't know. Let me know if I'm wrong, but I actually like this song.
Like I'm Hefner, I take 10% like I rep her. No faking my tits, but I'll check her. Give me brain like her neck hurt.
All things wouldn't be rosy and, good for Tana, because also in 2017, iDubbbz would release a content comp on her. And without getting too far in the weeds, Tana had basically started calling out iDubbbz on Twitter for being a white man using the N-word. At this time, iDubbbz, basically his whole ideology at the time was that if people stopped stigmatizing and stopped acting like it was a bad word, that somehow the power of the word would be lost, and that people who are upset about people who say that word, rightfully so, in my opinion, are perpetuating the power of that word. And iDubbbz is actually a white man who has never had somebody say the N-word towards him in a derogatory manner pertaining to his race. So therefore, I don't want to say opinion invalid because, we can look at that opinion, we can examine that opinion. But for me, it's going to be opinion thrown in the trash because, I'm sorry, iDubbbz has apologized or whatever, like in the current day. But again, like, I just weirded me out and I felt like I had to talk about this because iDubbbz took Tana basically calling him out for saying the N-word personally, because Tana had her own skeletons in her closet. There were videos of her saying the N-word casually. So he basically made this whole content cop. I think he also called out her story times and just her overall like demeanor. And this led to a great deal of controversy for Tana because Tana ended up releasing an apology regarding her use of the word. For a segment of the video, iDubbbz decided to go to one of Tana Mongeau's meet and greets, and at that meet and greet, he sat in line like he was a fan. He went up to Tana Mongeau, and he said, instead of say cheese, he said say a certain word, and he actually said it. So yeah, YouTube was a different time in 2017. But yeah, iDubbbz has now apologized for that situation. They even made up. But looking back, both of them were wrong. Like, I'm not mad at Tana for calling it out, but I am mad at Tana for throwing rocks from like a glass house because she did also have all those clips saying the N-word. I just think it's important because this caused a great deal of controversy for Tana. A lot of people were talking about this incident, a lot of buzz. A lot of people were like, cancel Tana. I think she'd actually lost followers over this situation. I mean, you know, she did also get exposed for saying the N-word, so I don't think it was just a content cop. I think it was a combination of those things. But here's where we get into the Tanacon arc and why Tanacon even became a thing in the first place. So VidCon is the biggest convention for YouTubers, and as a YouTuber who had a big audience at the time, I believe over 1 million subscribers, Tana was of course invited to VidCon, like many other big names. But Tana would also develop these issues with VidCon. Laying these issues out in an hour-long video rant posted in April 2018, a few months before Tanacon would occur, titled "Why Won't Be Attending VidCon 2018 a Rant." And like, no shade to Tana, but like, a lot of this is nothing burger. Maybe I'm being a hypocrite here because maybe my conscience is nothing burger, but whatever. But here's the main reasons that she really spoke as to why she didn't want to attend VidCon. And I just find these reasons interesting because when I was doing the research for this video, I did not realize that Tana would in 2019 end up going back to VidCon. So like, it's like you had all these criticisms about how VidCon was ran, and then you went right back to VidCon. Just take these all with a grain of salt and kind of have that in the back of your mind. So Tana's whole gripe with VidCon that she outlined in this hour-long video was that she was told, I think she said she was told by somebody that she was going to be, or she was under the impression that she was going to be a featured creator. Featured creator is basically, how do I say this? I won't say the VIP of VidCon, but it's kind of like you get access to the secret tunnelways, you get access to your own suite, your own room, like in the hotel, accommodations provided. You are kind of the hottest of the hot YouTubers, whatever, like at VidCon, I guess, at the time. So ultimately, she was not given that status. And she says that because of her not getting the status, that she had to stay in a, I think she said it was like a motel or something, like a not great hotel. While her friends who were featured creators got to stay in great accommodation. She also kind of states that security had become a big issue because as a non-featured creator, she was not able to use the secret passageways. She was not able to go backstage in a lot of places, so she would kind of have to walk with the peasants, if you will. And, you know, people would swarm her wanting to take her picture. Tana also like kind of bemoaned security at the event, saying that like she was mobbed. And because of this mobbing, apparently she says that she was told she was a fire hazard. At one point in the video, she alleges that the CEO actually listened to her concerns about this and still didn't care, not giving her featured creator. So next year, I guess she thought she was gonna get featured creator, and she says that she had the same problems again, but this time she was actually kicked out for being a fire hazard instead of just, you know, kind of getting the verbal warning that she got before from security. And while Tana at this time is known for exaggerating, I do just want to say that I am, or at least when I was writing this, I was more inclined to believe her, but given the fact that she goes back to VidCon, what I do take from this is that, you know, I think the main gripe here is that she was not given that featured creator status and that she felt like she was missing out, or felt like that her experience at VidCon was not the same as others who were featured creators. I think that lack of control, her feeling like she didn't really have a say in her being a featured creator, her kind of bemoaning the fact that she said like they were using her for advertising but not giving her that featured creator status, that was kind of the catalyst for her deciding to do Tanacon. And I want to emphasize that Tanacon seemed to be planned as more of a revenge event than anything. It was going to be the same weekend as VidCon. I just want to talk about as well, like the response from her influencer friends and generally from like the internet as a whole was very positive, because Tana did kind of give this statement that like she was very scared to talk about this and that she was scared about, you know, how brands would react if they would feel like she was a non-brand friendly individual or whatever because of her statements regarding VidCon. And like from this moment on, this seems to be her arc into deciding to plan and start VidCon. And like the first mention of Tanacon that I could find on her own Twitter page was this tweet that she made like right after her video. So this is like a quote tweet in response to somebody who said they wouldn't be attending VidCon next year. She says, "Guess you'll have to roll through Tanacon." She tweets on April 2nd. So between April and May 26th, I guess Tana had decided to go through with this. The official announcement for VidCon would be announced via a tweet from Tana, and she even stated that there would be free tickets. Following Tanacon, the website was taken down and now a message displays that said, "We're so sorry about Tanacon." But thanks to the magic of archiving, I was able to go directly to what the website would have looked like kind of around the time of the announcement, and there were 2 ticket tiers that I saw. So the 2 ticket tiers offered were Featured Creator, which was the free tier, and this was supposed to offer access to the main stage, panels, Q&A, and meetup opportunities. And the second tier, or the Featured Effing Creator tier, was going to be $65, and the additional benefits for paying that $65 was going to be you get a fast pass, private screenings, personal pictures, and a big part of it as well was you were supposed to get personalized text messages, which I also find interesting. Oh, and a goodie bag as well. The goodie bag will come back later, but apparently Tana would really dig in on these goodie bags being a very good investment, kind of saying stuff like, you know, these goodie bags are worth 3 times as much as your tickets. So Tana continued to promote this event, saying things like, there's gonna be a massive show with me and Bella, there's gonna be a lot of crazy stuff going on at Tanacon, and Tanacon actually started to get some mainstream coverage before. And from what I was reading, it was seen more as like this revenge story seen as like creators taking back independence from this larger corporate entity of VidCon that they didn't really have so much of a say. And a lot of creators seem to have issues with VidCon for a variety of reasons, but a lot of people sympathized with Tana. A lot of people kind of got where she was coming from as it pertains to VidCon not necessarily being the best place sometimes. So the idea of having a YouTuber run convention was very appealing to a lot of these creators. And there were a lot of creators scheduled to come. From the wiki, I believe it said there was around 80 plus planned guests. So among the names included of these planned guests were Shane Dawson and Miranda Sings. The Tanacon curse is crazy because both of those people would go right down in flames. And of course, there are other people who haven't really gone through their own cancellation cycles. I was also able to find like some of the planned events that were supposed to happen at Tanacon. So I just found these interesting. The Queens of Musically panel was gonna be with Daniel Cohn, Lauren Goodwin, Tyler Brown, Justin Blake, Ari, Mario Solomon, and Kristen Hancher. There was also going to be another panel, the Gabby Show Q&A, the Ember Chamberlain Q&A. Shane and friends were also supposed to be there in their own type of meet and greet / panel. Shane, Rylan, Morgan, and Andrew. There was also supposed to be this roast of Tana Mongeau by her friends. And there was a planned main stage show, which was going to feature Tana, Bella Thorne. I believe Lorraine was also mentioned in being in one of those. The excitement was ramping up, and the day of the convention was finally here. And, you know, we were going to see, this was the moment of truth. Could YouTubers independently set up their own convention? Could Tana Mongeau at 20 start her own convention and start a yearly trend that all on YouTube would love? Thousands of people had arrived early in the morning to a parking lot in Garden Grove, California, and they would pack into the quickly baking parking lot. So one of the first problems that people noticed that the free tickets were basically no ticket. Like, a lot of people said they had issues with kind of verifying the fact that they had a ticket at all. And there were also people there who didn't even have tickets at all. The whole intake process was just a mess. There was people all over the place. From the footage I've seen, the only people that were able to really get in were people who got there extremely early in the morning, or people who had their VIP passes and were able to kind of nudge their way through the line. We're gonna talk about this later, but there's also this like Reddit post discussing somebody's experience where they say they literally cut the line and just got in without showing their VIP pass that they had paid for, which just insane. Just shows the level of like the lack of security and the lack of planning that was at this event. I also did manage to find footage, like several people were vlogging and kind of just covering this event, but from inside, it looks like it's okay. I mean, it looks very packed, definitely, even given the fact that there are still thousands of people outside. The convention hall looked definitely pretty packed. Here's one Redditor discussing their own experience, stating, like how I said earlier, they ended up cutting the line and just getting in with literally no badge, showing how bad the security and like the intake process was during the entire event. Tanacon started today, a convention as a FU to VidCon, and it was a complete flop. There were 2 tickets being sold, a $1 version and a $65 version named the Feature Effing Creator ticket. If you bought this ticket, you were guaranteed a tweet from Tana herself, paid ticket offers, line skipping, and a gift bag worth more than quadruple the price of the whole ticket, private meet and greets, and a few more surprises. The goodie bag contains stickers and 1 condom reading Tana Condom. I'm not a condom manufacturer, but I don't think a couple stickers and 1 condom costs $260. When I arrived at Tanacon check-in at around 11 a.m., I was greeted with a line of about 15,000 people. This is an exaggeration because, you know, the police said 5,000, but it was a lot of people, to say the least. About 15,000 people wrapping around the parking lot just to get your badge into the convention. People had to get their badges to get into the convention. So there was a line, apparently, just to get your badge. This line was extremely slow, and my girlfriend was on Twitter reading about what was going on at Tanacon while we were waiting in line. I heard lots of different things going on, such as security wasn't letting people in because of capacity reasons, people couldn't get into meetups, and a lot of others. After waiting around 40 minutes and 4 hours and 20 more minutes to go of waiting in line and only moving 75 feet, I decided I was going to leave the line and walk to the front entrance of the hotel and see what was going on inside. After walking around the hotel and entering, I was literally in the convention. Surrounded with tons of other people with badges and security that was clueless about everything, I walked into the main stage with no question of who I was. I called my girlfriend and told her that I just walked in. This caused me to become furious because I paid $150 total to skip the line to get my badge. Security and Tanacon thought it would be a good idea to combine all the lines into one. My girlfriend and I walked around and saw one meetup room with about 50 chairs, and that's it. One main stage with a max capacity of 450 people, and that's about it. Very disappointed about the promises she made. They also discuss how they saw a huge crowd shouting refund, refund, refund. And here's what they end with. The convention was a complete flop. Everything was unorganized. Most of the things promised were not there. People who paid for tickets didn't even get them. And worst of all, security was complete trash. I was able to walk around the 14th floor freely without any hesitation until the very, very end of Tanacon Day, which was about 1:30 p.m. Something has to be done about it. I found a complete exploit to security, and that is actually terrifying. And they were ultimately able to get their refund, but I think this Reddit post really just shows the level of disorganization from someone who's actually there. You know, I don't go to a lot of conventions, but it just doesn't seem normal that all the lines would be made into one, and that it's really also just a concern for Tana's safety. She'd made story times talking about stalkers and people who were actively like seemingly wanting to harm her. So like the fact that this person was able to go on the 14th floor, which I think was an area that was supposed to be more for the talent, and just get into the convention, get near the main stage, is actually kind of insane and dangerous. And while this person touched on it, we have to talk about the bags, because the bags became one of the major things that people would talk about as it pertains to how this convention really failed everybody who came there. So those who paid for $65, as the poster on Reddit said, were promised this bag that was supposed to be quadruple the price of their ticket for Tanacon. So here's what was inside the bag. Stickers, an ad for an app, a literal ad being included in your bag that you paid $65 for, a bracelet, a shopping guide, and a Tana condom. Those are stories from people who are lucky enough to get outside, because there were people who weren't even able to find that security exploit and were literally just standing out in the hot sun until the event basically got canceled. People are getting sunburnt, people are tired, and some people even got heat stroke and had to be taken to local hospitals. If you're not American, I'm gonna include the Celsius conversion, but I was doing research on like what the temperature was like that day. So I think I saw the high around Garden Grove was like 76 degrees to be standing outside in a parking lot where it is going to be hotter, mind you, because of the asphalt, with no water being provided. So yeah, absolutely disaster. Even for those who were able to get inside and see kind of the lackluster selection that was inside the event, the whole thing would be canceled because of the safety risk that it offered. Good Times would release a statement saying, and Good Times is a company that Tana would work with, and we're gonna get into them. Good Times released a statement saying, quote, "At this point in time, there is no way to continue our weekend at Tana as is without risking the safety of this up to every single one of you." So, to say the least, this was an absolute disaster, and outrage was rightfully pouring in. Tana would really get on damage control. I think her and Bella Thorne wants people, they went outside at a point to kind of, you know, talk to their fans. I believe they were passing out some waters, but of course, with 4,000 or thousands of people being outside, there were not enough waters to go around. So this is her replying to a quote tweet from Shane, who would later make a documentary on this whole situation. She says, "I want to thank Shane for giving me a place to share this story. Shane has always pushed me to be as honest as effing possible, and I know he will help me explain everything with true transparency. It would be so easy for him to turn his back on me in fully and complete well-deserved anger, and he's choosing to do this. No matter what, Shane saved my life and I'm so grateful for him being there through all of this. My heart is shattered and I'm trying to pick up the pieces. The sunburns, the money, and the time spent, people waiting outside, everything is so effed up and I want to talk about it. And the backlash got so bad to the point where like OVO, which, remember I mentioned there being an ad for an app in the bags? OVO was that ad. So a company being involved with this event is literally going on. So here's one of their tweets. Tanacon was a total disaster and a big loss for us. Sorry to everyone that couldn't meet us and get freebies. The Tanacon at Good Time Show staff was rude and unorganized. We had little communication, no updates or refunds, and we were so sorry for everything and hope you're safe. And like while refunds were eventually promised, the process, which was kind of listed, included having to email people, and some people literally flew to LA solely for Tanacon, meaning that they could not get refunds for their hotel stays and their air travel. And following this event, a lot of people are like, you know, who is this company that Tana's working with? What is Good Time Entertainment? The company owner actually started to get a lot of attention at the event. Michael Weist, the CEO and kind of founder and the face of the company, was seen a lot rolling around on his Segway as if he was some sort of security officer throughout the entire event. And it just became a meme. And it was just really a bad look for the owner of the event, while people are like outside getting sunburnt, to be rolling around on a Segway as if he's some sort of faux security wall. So people really just started learning more about him during the fallout. And this man is a whole rabbit hole in itself. So we're just gonna get into Michael Weist and who he is and just his whole involvement in this situation. So Michael Weist is heavily involved in managing influencers and has propped up like a lot of companies around this type of influencing space. Some of these companies include Good Times Entertainment, which was mainly focused on managing influencers, setting up events for them, that type of thing. And Tana had actually worked with this company. Her and Malu allegedly worked with them. I was seeing on this archive page, sort of seems like a smaller scale event in Chicago. And Michael also founded Swerve Records, and this is the record label that Lorray released First Place under, so it's like this man is everywhere. His connections go deep. And just another thing that I just found insane, Michael is apparently a member of the Recording Academy, so if you ever see a Grammy win and you wonder who was voting for this, the guy who, you know, was behind Tanacon is actually one of the people voting in the Recording Academy for who's winning Grammy. So just keep that in mind. I guess it's a very broad group of people who are members of the Recording Academy. Around the same time that, you know, Tanacon was popping off and the Shane documentary was coming out, allegations of misconduct would come out against him by Rabbithole and Mikey Barone. And one thing about Michael that I've noticed, you know, throughout his whole time as being a manager, he does not play with the lawsuit button. He hit both of those with the lawsuit, and Rabbithole would eventually release an apology, like kind of renouncing those claims. Of course, we're never gonna know exactly 100% what happened, but I guess Michael won that lawsuit. And we also just have to talk about the lawsuits as well, because this is just a whole nother section of, I guess, his personality. Michael has filed lawsuits against some other clients, like Danielle Cohn, after she's like spoke out against a manager. She didn't really name him by name in the video that she was talking about, but she talked about a manager mismanaging her finances, and he kind of connected the dots and was like, you're talking about me, and sued her. I really tried to look deeply into the case and deeply into what happened surrounding that, but I was not able to find out what actually happened in that case, because that seems like a harder case to prove than the Rabbithole case, because you could directly say that Rabbithole was defaming him, like by making those allegations. But Danielle really seemed to shy away from naming names, and I think that's a little bit harder to prove in court. But it seems like he has no issues with going up against giants and starting lawsuits that I feel like are impossible to win, because he also sued TikTok. He sued TikTok for banning people for no reason. And I just think that is like that's something that a law firm, like a class action type beat, like one person suing TikTok for that is actually kind of insane. So who's really to blame, in my opinion, in this whole situation? In my opinion, both are, but for different reasons. But I do think like the prevailing narrative that came out after the event, which was that Michael Weist is this like evil guy, I feel like he took a brunt of the blame, especially from Tana, especially like from a lot of the coverage. But I don't think that is entirely accurate to the whole picture. I'm not saying he's the best person in the world. In fact, in my humble opinion, from what I've read about him, I don't really like him. But I do think that like a lot of the narrative that was really easy to push on him was that he was the one 100% at fault, and that he was the one who lied to Tana, and that he was the one who set this whole thing up, and that Tana had no idea what was happening. And I just think that is way, way, way too charitable. I think you can take into account that Tana may not have known the full depth, and that he should take accountability, or he should be held accountable for a lot of the stuff that went wrong with this and a lot of the organizational issues. But I do think that Tana could have also taken her time and done more research, because it seems like this was a fairly quick turnaround from that video releasing on April 2nd to the announcement on May 26th to June 22nd being the event date. A lot of people forget that events need time to cook and actually, find event spaces. I think Tana's involvement in this whole situation is understated to a level that is kind of like, I don't know, insane. So like Tana in the Shane documentary placed a healthy heaping of blame on Good Times, saying that she had been lied to. And I get that, but I feel like if you're putting your name on something, you should also be deeply involved. Again, she was 20. I'm 20. I would probably make sure that something I'm putting my name on, like to this extent, is something that I'm proud of. I think Tana found an easy out in blaming Michael because the internet did not like him from the jump. He's not a very likable character, especially in this scenario with the Segway video coming out. He didn't seem like he was, rushing around like a captain trying to save a sinking ship. He seems like he was going down the ship peacefully, riding on his Segway as people were banging on the doors, trying to be let in and screaming for refunds. While I do think Tana did hold some responsibility in this situation, more than I think is given to her by the internet, I think there's no doubt that there is blame to be placed on Michael here. And I have to say that these are my opinions because Michael loves to press that lawsuit button, and I don't want to be in court. So he allegedly claimed in the Shane docuseries that the hotel lied to him, or somebody had lied to him about the capacity of the hotel. But my doubt is really high because not only in the docuseries, I think Shane said that he had to sign a document showing the capacity of the venue, but also just looking at the website, a basic thing that anybody could do. I saw that the capacity was 1,018. If you add up some of the other ballrooms, I guess you could get a little bit higher, but it's not getting to the 4,000 to 5,000 that the local authorities were saying were there. So like, again, that is something that I think, we gotta, listen, Mike, you gotta take some blame here. But I do also think it's important to note that he did have more to lose in this situation than Tana. Like, while Tana had certainly probably put her own money into this, after this, Michael's Good Times Entertainment apparently just went bankrupt. And he said that he lost $700,000 from this whole situation. So just overall, I think that this situation became a failure because Tana was really motivated by this want for revenge, this want to make her own successful thing, which I think that she could have done. And I think that a lot of the failures come down to timing and kind of this quick turnaround. Because like, if Tana had maybe been like, in April, why don't we host something in like September? Or, maybe we could find a bigger venue. Maybe, we could have more of a fleshed out type of thing. I'm not saying that might have 100% fixed everything, but I think it was a big part of like that. And I also think that a lot of it comes down to lack of experience because while I saw Good Times Entertainment, on their website mention that they had done events, it seems like they hadn't done anything to this big of a scale. Maybe that comes down to Tana not really expecting this outpouring of support and this really major YouTube community building moment to be thrust upon her. Maybe she didn't expect, to even do Tanacon. This just seems to be a mess of massive proportions and honestly low-key a cash and clout grab that tremendously blew up in the faces of all those who wanted to organize and wanted to be involved with it, unfortunately. And I truly do feel for the people who actually put their hard-earned money and trust into Tana for this situation, because imagine spending like $1,000 on a flight and being stuck outside for 4 hours, or even the people who just spent $65. Even if you spent $1, you deserve to get something that is actually enjoyable. Regardless, that's all from me. I've been sitting here yapping. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you enjoyed, and be sure to hit that like and subscribe button if you like what you saw. I'm honestly thinking about doing a deep dive on Colleen Ballinger, which I feel like might be another long video. So, sit down, get your snacks and enjoy the show. Maybe coming next week. I don't know. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all all next time. Have a good night or day or wherever you are. Bye, everybody. And yes, I was using a spoon for a mic holder. I will see you all next time. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.
I was like, I want a bleach and tone. Like, can you do a bleach and tone for me, please? Like, smiley face emoji. And she was like, tone? A question mark. And I was like, a bleach and tone? Like, a bleach and tone? Like, bleach and tone? Like, what do you mean tone? Like, after you bleach it, can you tone it? Like, make it not brassy. And she was like, oh, I understand. And put, like, the blonde princess emoji. And I was like, okay, like, I'm glad you understand.